So one of my favorite logical fallacies of all time, and there's so many to pick from to be the favorite, but one of my favorite logical fallacies is where people look at research and they take the parts they like, and then they ignore the rest.
Uh-huh.
They ignore all the parts that sort of disprove their argument, whatever the particular argument is. So on the New York Times, they have a room for debate section on the website where people can post things. And Mark L. Rienzi posted a little editorial called Good for Religion, Good for America, where he talks about the religious tax exemptions that religions enjoy in the United States, and how those are good for religion, and therefore they're good for America. And he talks about how those exemptions, tax exemptions, allow religious institutions to thrive, and then society gets benefits from those religions. One of the things that he brings up is, one of his examples is the Quakers. Now, early in American history, Quakers refused to fight in the military, even in dire national emergencies, because it was their sincerely held religious belief to not be violent. And so they were allowed to endure and avoid drafts. They could file conscientious objector status, things like that. So based on their religious beliefs. Mark Rienzi goes on to say that the beneficiary of this was, later on in American history, was slaves, because the Quakers were one of the abolitionist groups who spoke out against slavery. And I think that the problem with this is that he completely ignores preachers like James Henley Thornwall and Robert Louis Dabney, who were pro-slavery preachers who gave sermons about how the Bible is pro-slavery and Jesus Christ did not refute the institution of slavery in the New Testament. And they talked about how, no, the Bible is pro-slavery and this and the other thing. And so I think that's the mistake that the author of this article has made, is that, he's looking, okay, some religious groups were against slavery, and he's totally ignoring all the other religious groups that were pro-slavery. And I think he immediately, his argument just on that grounds alone, it immediately falls apart. And he makes a couple other examples, like the civil rights movement, and he totally ignores the religious organizations in the South that were against the civil rights movement and wanted segregation and didn't want it intermingling, because that would be a sin and all that kind of stuff. There's actual Bible verses going forward even past that where we talk about the legalization of interracial marriage in the United States. There were religious groups that fought against that because there's parts of the Bible where you'd not, it's sinful to mix your tribes and things like that. And he goes on, he makes a point that Justice Elena Kagan explained that churches are exempt from taxes and regulations for a reason, because they provide a critical buffer against the power of government. And I think it's funny that despite all the political stuff that we have going on and corporations and all that kind of stuff, our government in the United States is supposed to be an expression of the people. It's supposed to be a government of the people, by the people, for the people. So the idea that religions would provide a critical buffer against the power of the government is basically saying that religions are protecting us from the secular power of us. It's like admitting that the idea of religion is to work against our own interests. To me, that's how I read it.
Oh,
I'm a little confused, I'm sorry.
I have a couple questions. Number one, I want to say interracial marriages by some religions, you said still are.
Well, I meant, but these organizations fought against the changing of the secular legal code.
I guess the Quakers not fighting in the war, they didn't die, and therefore they were here to support.
The idea that the government didn't say, well, you can't exist as a group, because we're not going to. It's not that they didn't fight in the war and that they were going to die, but the government was to say, this organization is now going to enjoy an outlaw status, and we're going to persecute them, instead of respecting their religious belief and saying, okay, you don't have to fight.
Wait, I'm confused. So they actually did still recruit Quakers?
No, the point is that they could be conscious objectors. They could get out of drafts and things like that.
Correct. But I just don't see the correlation with how they helped slavery. I guess I'm missing his argument as.
Well, his argument is because they were allowed an exempt status and they could get tax benefits and not have to fight in wars and were protected as a group instead of persecuted. Having their members sent to jail for not for basically resisting the draft.
So now I'm understanding. So because this group managed to get some sort of protection, it led to other groups coming together and saying, we're not going to persecute this group, then we're not going to persecute this group. You're right. It was making huge leaps here.
Yeah. Well, the big thing is the population of the Quakers. I mean, it's like 4% at that time.
Right.
I mean, if any, if even close to that number. So how were they really the impact that was making the significant changes? Mm-hmm. Like you're saying, the other religions were arguing the opposite.
That's a huge leap to make, and a huge, it'd be like saying, Louis Black, if it weren't for that horse, I'd never gone to college. Yeah. There's no real cause and effect there, aside from, because if you want to put it into a bigger perspective, just about most everyone who came to America in general was either escaping religious persecution or taxes. So by that standard, the entire basis and foundation had to do with resisting persecution and avoiding persecution, and it was founded far before the Quakers and far before any particular religion.
But I think part of why this has come up recently is what is known as the Trinity broadcast network has sort of come under fire. They've sort of had some family falling out, and it's brought to light very directly. I mean, a lot of this has been known for a while, but it's brought to light a lot of the extravagances that Christian mega churches in the United States can enjoy. One of the particular cases about the thing that's come out with this Trinity broadcast network is that what they would do is they'll pretty much have anyone who works for them declared a minister, including in one case a chauffeur that they employed. He was declared a minister so they don't have to pay taxes on salary and things like that, and they get parsonage exemptions and they get all these things where they can double dip, and they get they can double dip on tax exemptions and then get the getting of federal funds to fund what is founded, and it operates under the auspices of being a charitable organizations. And these kinds of organizations, they get a lot more exemptions and tax-free status that even secular charities don't get to enjoy because they're not religions. And the TBN, they operate the Holy Land Experience, which is like a theme park in Florida.
Yes.
And I mean, they don't have to declare their financial records and things like that. They get to keep that all secret. They're exempt from a lot of regulations. There's lots of charitable organizations that are exempt from, if they run daycares, they're exempt from a lot of trainings that are federally required for secular daycare companies. There's tons of kinds of stuff that they get away with, and because they do things they can write off things as these religious charitable expenses, even when they're not, they just make murderous amounts of money.
Yeah, it's you look at charitable organizations I'll just use one because my mom worked for them, JDF, Juvenile Diabetes Foundation. My mom was taxed as an employee. Mm-hmm. The company is tax exempt in many ways, but she was taxed as an employee. What it seems to indicate with the Trinity Broadcasting Network, if these people are declared ministers, their actual salaries are not even being taxed.
That's the out. They don't pay income tax. And the church gets subsidies for land that they can buy at a reduced rate, and there's just amazing benefits. And so I think that's where Mark Rienzi's argument is he's sort of stemming from. He's like, yeah, there are abuses, but look at all the benefits that we garner from giving religions this tax exempt status.
He gave?
Yeah, and he talks about things like the civil rights movement. He's like, but it's good for. It benefits America as a whole. When he's trying to say, even in the face of all these kinds of abuse, basically, which is a lie because the benefit he gives, he's ignoring the fact that religious organizations were against the civil rights movement or were pro-slavery in some cases.
He's focusing on the minority religious movements that were arguing against it, but then he's ignoring the majority religious groups that were totally
in favor of it. Yeah,
that's ridiculous.
It absolutely is. I think it's really dishonest because I don't. He labels his credits on this argument that he is a senior counsel at the Beckett Fund for Religious Liberty, and he is a professor of constitutional law at the Columbus School of Law, and he is also at the Catholic University of America as a law professor, and he should know. And the fact that he is omitting these kinds of things is like he's really arguing dishonestly about how these kinds of things are good for America, because it's not like he's ignorant of these things.
Right.
He knows. So I think the fact that he knows, and this is still the best argument he can make, is kind of pathetic.
Yep.
But I want to know what you guys think too. Like, is there really some kind of foundation for religious exemptions really being beneficial towards America? Should they enjoy a tax-exempt status that goes above and beyond what secular charities get? Because in my estimation, absolutely not. I would love to see them taxed. But we'll leave it up to you guys. Let us know what you think. Outcasts out.